Welcome to another episode of Tech Life Stories. On the podcast today, I have Tim Mills. Tim has over 25 years experience in IT service management, managing and transforming IT services. He's worked for the likes of The Mirror, SCC and Eversheds. He's now the founder of ITSM, a team of consultants supporting clients across IT and enterprise service management with accreditations across ITIL, SIAM, DevOps and Agile. Tim, I hope that's a good intro. I'm sure you can give me a bit of a better one for yourself. Do you want to fire away?
Yeah. How far do you want me to go back? I'll tell you what. We'll start with the easy bit, shall we? So,
Go for it.
So I founded the ITSM People, 2014, and originally it was just me as a contractor, doing head of service and service delivery type roles, and then the business has grown somewhat, certainly over the last 5 or 6 years, for a combination of reasons. And now there's a medium-sized team. It fluctuates a little bit depending on projects. And we just focus purely on service management activity. So we do a lot of ITSM maturity assessments. We do a lot of operating model work, a lot of process work, as you'd expect. We consider ourselves to be very personable people, and very pragmatic about ITSM. And we like to focus on right practice rather than best practice, and maybe we'll delve into that a little bit further. So let's start with that, and if you want to go back further or delve into any of those topics, we certainly can.
Okay, so I appreciate you giving me a quick rundown of ITSM People, and we will delve more into that in a bit more detail shortly. But I think it'd be good for the listeners to understand your background, how you got to this stage. So let's rewind all the way back and how you got into the technology sector. Was it something you chose to do? I know we've had an off-air kind of conversation about schooling and stuff, but maybe you can give the viewers a bit of a better insight.
Yeah, certainly. Right. So when I was at school, I mean, I'm 50 in October, right? So when I was at school, service management wasn't a thing, and I certainly had no interest in computers, as it was called back then. In fact, I had no interest in anything other than skateboarding. So I failed school miserably, and so this is not to encourage other people not to do, or other kids not to do well at school, because it is very important. For me at the time, I just had little interest. I love the social aspect of going to school, but I didn't like the actual work, and I really didn't like homework because I just got my skateboard and went out skateboarding straight after school, right? So because of that, I failed school miserably. Didn't get any GCSEs or anything. And I think for me, it wasn't like I was semi-academic. I don't even know whether this is a thing now, but I was in top set English and maths, and so it wasn't like I wasn't capable. I just had no interest, and I was talking to someone about this yesterday. Actually, I think the age of 14, 15, 16, when you're choosing what things you want to do, I don't know. Unless you want to be a vet or a doctor, and you're like, right, I need to go and do these things. But for me, and I guess for maybe a lot of other kids, I didn't know what I wanted at that point, and certainly had no interest in. I thought I was going to be a professional skateboarder, so nothing else mattered, right? Or so I thought at the time. So I failed school miserably, and all my friends were going off to college, or lots of my friends were going off to college, which seemed like a cool thing to do. So I thought, right, well, how do I go to college? Well, the only way into college was to go there to retake my GCSEs because I didn't have any. And then I got kicked out of college after about 6 months for not turning up to class. So it was it was a catastrophic failure in terms of my education. And after that, I probably messed around for a couple of years, doing what kids do. And then maybe when I was about 18, started doing some labouring work for my brother because he'd got a building firm. And then I went on for that, and I don't think I mentioned this to you the other day, actually, but I actually became a stonemason for a while.
Yeah, you didn't mention that.
My friend, no, right? I know, it's really bizarre. And a friend of mine, his father had quite a big stonemasonry company, and the work my brother dried up. So I started doing a bit of labouring for them, which developed into learning how to be a stonemason. So I did that for three or 4 years, maybe something like that. I probably knew it wasn't for me in the longer term, but yeah, it means to an end. We all got to earn some money, and it was, it was quite a laugh hanging around with all my pals doing what we were doing. And then an opportunity came up. In fact, my brother-in-law was working for a newspaper that was owned by the Mirror Group called the Birmingham Post and Mail. I'm based in the Midlands, and just in case that's not clear from my accent, if people haven't worked it out, we're one from Birmingham. And so he was already working at the Birmingham Post and Mail and suggested there's some telesales jobs. Why don't you apply? It could be a good way into different route into sales or whatever. And so I just went for a job with the Birmingham Post and Mail and got the job. And it was kind of inbound telesales. So the kind of thing you're dealing with is people who just kind of, the world's changing in terms of newspapers now, obviously, but people who want to sell their car, classified ads, basically. So if you want to sell the car or, and it sounds awful when you say this is a sales job, but people who want to register people's deaths and put messages in, but you're there to upsell them, right? They're calling me and saying, my husband's just died, can you put something in the paper? And like, do you want a bigger ad? Do you want a bigger one? So it's terrible, really, right? But
so that was you on the other end of the phone, then, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So if any listeners have ever done that, it might be me. But it was a long time ago, obviously. So I'd got kind of a basic level of sales experience, and then I worked in a couple of different sales jobs actually within the newspaper itself. I moved into what they called entertainment, so I was dealing with all the cinemas and all the restaurants, which was quite cool actually, because I was just kind of getting free everywhere. Everyone kind of knew who I was around Birmingham. I always got free Indian meals. If they knew you were from the Birmingham Post and Mail, like, come in, you can have a meal for free, because they thought you were an editor or something, which I wasn't. I was just booking ads for people, but that's fine. So I did that for a while, but again, I kind of just knew that sales wasn't really for me.
Sounds like fun though. You was having fun,
yeah,
right? Yeah. You were still young, having fun.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything wrong with that
at this point. Yeah. Probably. Yeah, early 20s, I'd say. And I think one of the things I did mention to you actually is I remember sitting chained to my desk, right, and working on my Mac, and all the Macs had just been upgraded. And I remember I'd just seen this guy walk around. He was on his mobile phone, and I think he was like project managing the implementation of the new Macs and all the different system that we'd put in place. And I was just looking and thinking, I want his job. And I don't know why I thought I wanted his job. I just thought he looks cool. He's got a mobile phone, because it was a long time ago, right? When not many people had mobile phones. And he was just kind of waltzing up and down. He was probably the most stressed person in the room, but on the face of it, I thought, oh, that looked quite cool. I want to do that.
Cool.
Yeah, it looked cool. I wasn't chained to a desk, right? So I thought that was quite good. And a job came up on the help desk, as we called it back then, which I went for. Just thought, I want to get into that. And I thought I knew a bit about computers, because I'd inputted some ads onto a Mac, right?
Yeah.
And went for the job, didn't get it because I'd got no experience, of course. And then I just went off and bought myself a laptop, like £200 or something, some knackered old Windows 95 laptop, and just learned my way around. And I was just fascinated. I was just fascinated by it all. And I think there's a real, if you're fascinated by something, it really helps you fast track, in terms of your learning, because you just throw yourself into it. So I'd go home from work and I'd just sit playing on my, I say playing, not even playing games, but just working out where files were and how to move things around and stuff like that. So about 6 months later, another job came up on the IT help desk, and it was the help desk for the Mirror Group themselves, because it was like a group IT service. But there was kind of regionalized kind of pots of activity, different service desks and so on. So I went for another job, and it was just a 6-month opening, because there was a lady that had gone on maternity leave. So there's a bit of a risk associated with this, because we can only offer you 6 months, and I was leaving at the time, I guess, a relatively well paid for a 20-year-old, 21-year-old or whatever, relatively well paid job, which was semi-secure, I guess. So there was a bit of a risk, and I just thought, you know what, just going to go for it. I pondered it for a good few days. I thought, well, I'm just going to go for it, and just immersed myself in it and absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved, albeit it's quite stressful, right? Working on help desk, service desk. I don't envy people that do that. It's a very difficult job, but I loved it. Absolutely, I actually loved it. And so when it came to the end of 6 months, sure enough, the lady that went on maternity didn't come back, or at least she didn't want to come back full time.
Mhm.
So there was job openings. So they was like, "Do you want to stay?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I did that for probably a couple of years, and then started going down a more technical route. I guess I started looking after. Shows how long ago it was. Lotus Notes databases, and
Yeah, I
because
remember it very
they
well.
built their whole finance system and the service desk tool, as we help desk tool as we used to call it then, was all built Domino and Lotus Notes, right? It was all
Mm.
like bespoke stuff. So I was looking after that. I was looking after some mail servers and some antivirus stuff. So I was getting kind of semi-technical. Um, and then an opportunity came along. So I didn't actually move into service desk management. Do you want me to carry on
Yeah, the story's
with this
great. Keep
route?
going.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
good,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Keep
Okay,
going.
cool.
100%.
I was just thinking, we'll do the hour just for me just rattling on about
Probably.
this, right? So yeah, so then an opportunity came up. They were quite forward thinking at the time. So the Mirror Group had got a team of business managers, and bearing in mind we're talking mid to late 90s. Okay, so it's like a business relationship manager, as we would call them now, a BRM.
Yeah.
But at the time, you didn't, it wasn't particularly common to have that. So it was quite forward thinking for the Mirror to be doing that kind of stuff. So an opening came up to look after what was HR as a department of,
Mhm.
a customer, if you like, of mine, and also what we then called the internet department, which I think made you chuckle last time we spoke about it. So
Yeah.
obviously, you don't really get internet departments as such now. But that's what it was. And they were the people designing all the websites and trying to get everything from the newspapers into online. So that was the way of the world. And then the Mirror merged with a company called Trinity Mirror. I think they're now called
Okay.
Reach, actually. They might have rebranded again over the years. But Trinity were a huge regional newspaper organisation, and Mirror were a national newspaper organisation. But Trinity were actually bigger. Well,
Mhm.
so they merged. Was it hostile takeover? I don't know, but there was quite a lot of upheaval, and there was a project in flight at this point, quite a significant project where there was a whole load of investment, and the idea being that we're going to move all the content from the newspapers online. We're going to now have all these different regional websites, content management system, which Gemini were providing. So I got sucked into this because I was looking after the internet department. All of a sudden, it just went like this, right? Because it was like
Yeah.
90s bubble. And so I started working in that, and then they started up a separate company called Trinity Mirror Digital, and I was asked to go and help head up with the IT director to go and head up that business. And we employed a team of what referred to as client managers, but again, business relationship managers in effect. And we all had our geographical area that we looked after. And so, in effect, they set up this separate company with its own P&L and thrown a load of money in it. And there's all these new internet departments all created around the country, which was a separate business, and they needed a separate service desk from the standard IT service desk. So I got immersed in all that, and it was a really fascinating time. It was a really exciting thing. They were just throwing loads of money at it, and everyone's
Yeah.
kind of doing some quite cutting edge stuff at the time, I guess. Um, and then it just all fell apart. So Trinity just kind of pulled the plug. I think they'd spent 30 million out of the committed 90, and just thinking, we just seem to be wasting a lot of money here. So they just pulled the plug on it. So we all got made redundant. I think it was 2001. I think it was just after the millennium. In fact, it was, because I remember being on call for the millennium. So shortly after that, there was, pretty much not every single person in Trinity Mirror Digital got made redundant, but they kind of closed the company and moved everyone back into the newspapers.
Sure.
And so quite a few people either got voluntary redundancy or redundancy, one or the other. And I was one of those that was affected by that. And at the time, it was it's quite hard not to take it personally, you know. And in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But it's quite hard not to take that personally. I was 21 maybe at this point, you know, early half of the 20s, surely.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was quite difficult. And you just think the world's going to end. I mean, luckily, I've been at the Mirror for quite a while. Um, so I didn't do too bad redundancy wise. But yeah, just think, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And then you start questioning your own ability and you look at
Yeah.
your CV and think, who am I? Like, what am I in terms of what job role do I go and do? Is it, I mean, and even service delivery manager, you kind of heard a little bit about it in MSPs and so on, but it's nowhere near as big as it is now, right? You know,
Oh,
service
100%.
management wasn't even a phrase back then, really. You know, you'd got service delivery managers doing stuff for MSPs and maybe some internal roles, but it was certainly less of a thing. So you kind of sit there scratching your head going, what am I going to do? And I went to all sorts of weird and wonderful interviews in hindsight, like what was I thinking that was the right path for me? But I ended up getting a job with service, what they're called, specialist computer centers, SCC, as you just
SAC.
mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I went in originally as a service desk manager. They'd won a new outsourced service desk contract. So at that time, SEC were predominantly a break fix desktop engineering type and equipment supply. I mean, the world's moved on a lot since then, right? So
Yeah.
they do lots of managed services now, and the business has grown and matured significantly since then. But at the time, service desk was a whole new thing for them. So they partnered with Axios
Axios.
Assist.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah. So
Yeah.
so not Axelos, but Axios, the
Axios.
service desk platform. Um, and so I ended up. So we implemented that for the first service desk customer, Unipart Automotive.
Hmm.
Um, and because then I was the semi-golden boy, it was quite a challenging 12 months. But then I was the service desk and Axios Assist golden boy, right? It's like if ever there was a new contract, because once they've sold one, that's it, right? Go and sell more of
Go
those. We've got the
further. Yeah.
blueprint, go and sell them. So then I was just kind of thrown into any new service desk contract, right? Get Tim to go and implement that, get Tim to go and implement that. So my brand very quickly became about service desk and tooling, I guess. Um, and there, so I was there for three or 4 years, maybe. And then I just thought it's time to go. So at the time, um, I think it's fair to say that SEC were maturing. They were going through a maturity period. That's probably quite a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And it was challenging. You know, I mean, any SDM job is challenging, right? It's very difficult, and certainly working for an MSP, the buck stops with you
100%.
primarily. It's not an easy job, but you know you have to go through all this stuff to do the kind of stuff that we do today. But I decided, I think it was around 2004. I left there and I went to Npower. So and I joined Npower. Accenture actually went in to do um, uh, new operating model for them, and one of the outputs of the operating model review was that they needed a team of what do we call ourselves? Client service managers, I think it was, or service managers. In effect, again, BRM type
Yeah.
stuff. So I'd kind of done a bit of BRM, then more operational SDM, then went back into BRM again. So Npower, or the company that own Npower, RWE, or did own them, there's multiple businesses ranging from renewable energy and certainly businesses you wouldn't have heard of. But my customer was actually the retail brand Npower, which everybody's heard of, right? Or a lot of people
Yeah.
would have. So so yeah, I was the face of IT. You know, not a particularly pretty face, maybe, but I was the face of IT for Npower. So doing all the normal stuff, you know, helping with business engagement, demand management, escalations, you know, when there's a major incident, and doing some reporting and all that kind of stuff, like internal SDM type role. And I love that. That was fascinating. And this is where it went kind of a little bit off on a different route. So my mum passed away, unfortunately, in I think it was 2006,
Sorry
and
to
at the
hear
time,
that.
Npower off. Yeah, no, well, you know, it's life, isn't it? And Npower offered me a sabbatical. So I actually took a year or so out, went off to Mallorca. I'd already got a little flat over there. And so just took a bit of time out, went over there for a while, and then just got into another role, head of service, another perm role for a short while, a company called Arden Software. Um, and then I went back, and then I went to Eversheds.
Hmm.
So coincidentally, and I'm still friends with him now. In fact, I've been doing some work with him this week, strangely enough. My first ever customer, in fact, I'll backtrack just quickly. One of the gigs that I did at SCC was for Taylor Woodrow. They're called Taylor Wimpey now, but it was
Remember
Taylor
it?
Woodrow at the time. And SCC had won a service desk contract. So that was my first step from pure service desk work into into more of an SDM type role. And he won't mind me name checking him, of course, but the IT director there, my customer ignite was a guy called Paul Harris. You might have even heard of him. He's been around the block for some years, and it was quite challenging, to say the least. Not because of Paul, well, partly because of Paul, but it was quite a difficult period in
Sure.
terms of the contract that had been sold versus our ability to deliver on said contract. So I ended up at Eversheds because Paul was the CIO there. So I hadn't spoke to him for 10 years or so, and I got in touch, and he was like, get in here. Obviously I must have made a good impression, albeit it was a challenging period, back in the early 2000s there. But so then I went to Eversheds, and I was really fortunate to do. I initially went there as a contractor, and then it went perm for a while. Quite a mature environment, great place to be. Law is quite an interesting
Mhm.
place to be anyway, for a combination of reasons. But so I did a stint there at Eversheds for maybe three years or so. Thoroughly enjoyed it. But again, you get to a stage after 2 or 3 years. At least I have. I've always 2 or 3 years, and I'm ready to go somewhere else. And
Mhm.
that's when I went self-employed. When this all started. So that brings us up to 2014, and initially went self-employed. Set up a limited company, but I was a contractor,
Yeah.
just on my own, doing interim SDM roles, head of service type stuff. And I think it just became very quickly I think because I'd worked in some semi-mature environments, and maybe partly because just my own personality, it always became about service improvement. So even though I'd go and do a 6-month interim SDM role, for example, which was just, can you just babysit this service while someone's on maternity or something like that? And I guess a lot of people like this, but you kind of go in somewhere and you go, well, that's not working very well, or your tool's rubbish, or this is rubbish, or that's rubbish. And so 9 times out of 10, there'd be a service improvement plan
Mm.
within a matter of weeks of me being there going, we need to do this, and this. And then because of that, there was, can you do another 6 months? Can you run service improvement for us? And this kind of thing. So my personal brand then started becoming more about transformational activity, I guess. Do you want me to pause there and ask any questions, or do you want me to carry on bringing us up to where we are today?
Take me up to where you are. I've got quite a few notes that I want to backtrack on. But yeah, take
Okay.
us up to where we are, please.
Okay. So yeah, so I guess the first 3, 4, maybe even 5 years, it was just me. But I was getting sucked into more and more longer term gigs, and just because of the very nature of transformation, you're working with a big company, it can go on, could go on for a while.
Sure.
And I was getting contacted about work that I just couldn't fulfill because I was doing stuff. So there's always this thing in the back of my mind thinking, I think there's an opportunity here for a pure play service management consultancy, because whilst there's lots of other companies out there, and certainly you've certainly got the bigger consultancies, and then some of the smaller ones, but they dabble and they do a bit of service management and a bit of tech projects and a bit of project management. But my skill set is obviously all about service management. So yes, I
Mhm.
started off working on Lotus Notes and tech support and stuff like that, but I'd not done that for years. I'd got a broad understanding of technology, but it was now very much service desk, service management, and tooling, right? And that's where my core skills were. So I couldn't, I kept thinking, I'm sure there's an opportunity here to expand on this. And it was just a matter of time, I think, until that opportunity came along. Um, and then I think, as I explained to you when we spoke before, there was two main catalysts actually that really helped expand the business. So the first was IR35,
Mhm.
which a lot of people are just like, what? Because when IR35 has obviously been around for a long time. I think when I've it was in the mid-90s, I think, it was introduced. It's certainly been around forever.
Tim, just for the sake of
And
the listeners that don't know what IR35 is, do you mind just giving a little rundown on that?
yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So IR35 is a tax legislation. Did you just notice I've got shorts on, by the way?
So
I
have
did
I,
say
don't
to you I
worry.
might be in shorts. Oh, yeah, good. Okay. I did. Yeah, I was trying to keep them under the desk, but I just noticed my knee popped up.
Don't worry.
So, yeah, so sorry. So IR35 is, you can keep that in, by the way. You don't need to cut that out. IR35 is a tax legislation that was brought in a long time ago. And the idea of it, and I'm no tax expert, so take this with a little pinch of salt, but the idea of it is that if you're self-employed, if you're a contractor, but you're doing the same role, let's say you're sitting at a desk on an IT service desk, right? And you've got a perm employee doing tech support, and you're sitting there doing exactly the same job as them, but you're a contractor, then the legislation says that you should be paying the same amount of tax,
Yeah.
right? So, and say this has been around for a long time, and they use the phrase disguised employee. So if you're doing the same job as that person, but you're earning more money because you're paying less tax, then the phrase is you're a disguised employee. And HMRC say you should pay the same amount of tax as that other person. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that law has actually been around for a very long time.
Correct.
But about, I'm going to say, maybe getting on for 10 years ago, they relaunched IR35 and they moved the liability from the contractor themselves to the client. This is my understanding of the situation. Okay, so what that meant, and they moved it they tried it in the public sector first. Okay,
Correct.
so the idea being that HMRC themselves have got contractors working for them, right? So, but they had to change the way that they manage those contractors to say, if you're doing a normal job with an employment contract, a job spec, you are now inside IR35. Okay, so you are now going to pay the same amount of tax as the people that are on doing perm roles. And there's a number of gotchas around this, but if you are, by very definition, not doing a job, but you're acting as a consultant, it's a project with a start and an end, and there's a load of implications around this. I won't bore you with it all, but there's certain things that are really definitive between disguised employee and a consultant.
I think one
And
of
where
those,
you
Tim,
need that,
isn't it like having like deliverables and having like to achieve deliverables, and you
absolutely,
can
statements of
achieve those
work,
deliverables.
deliverables.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and there's other things like substitution, for example. So obviously, if you're an employee and you decide you can't go in one day, you can't send someone in your place. You can't say to your wife, "Can you go in and do that work for me?" Whereas that's one of the gotchas with around IR35, is my understanding.
yeah,
So in a lot of the contracts that we work in, we do substitute people
yeah,
because we've committed to a contract and an outcome, right? And the
yeah.
statement of work and so on. So there's a number of things like that are really important. So they relaunched all this in the public sector, and it had a massive impact on the market. Ultimately, contractors started charging more money on the day
Mm-hmm.
rates because they needed to allow for, well, hang on a minute, I'm getting taxed the same as a permanent employee, yet I don't get any holiday, sickness, benefits, all that kind of stuff. So actually now I'm going to charge you 30, 40% on top of my day rate.
Yeah,
So the government actually started paying more money for their contractors on the back of this new legislation, right? So it really shook the market. So then you got everyone leaving the public sector, going into the private sector. So all the private sector all the job boards were like, put a job on there outside R35,
everyone's got
right?
it. Everyone's got it.
1,000 people like applying for the
Yeah, yeah,
job or whatever, right? Now, while this was going on, I was quite fortunate. I was quite busy, so it didn't affect me. I was working outside R35, and then they once they'd kind of the dust had settled in the public sector, they then said, right, now we're going to hit the private sector.
yeah.
And I think this was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. I think they pushed it back. They were threatening it, and I think they pushed it back partly because of COVID.
COVID, I remember.
But
Yeah,
yeah, but now obviously it's the legislation does apply for the private sector as well. So what that ultimately meant was there was a massive impact on the contractor market.
mm-hmm.
Initially public sector and then private sector, where people are either just going, right, we've had a good run, we're done kind of thing, or everyone's applying for perm jobs. And I don't look at job boards. I haven't looked at job boards for years, so I don't really know. But I suspect there's a lot less outside IR35 roles now, and a lot of it's inside IR35, or just
Correct.
less contractor roles. The problem with that, of course, is, and a lot of organisations took a real broad brush approach to because the liability was now, and when I talk about liability, what I mean by that is if there was a tax investigation onto an individual, historically, if it was deemed that that person was a disguised employee, it would be the contractor that would have to pay their own tax bill to say, well, actually, there's a deficit of tax and you now need to kind of cover the 12-month period for that contract or whatever it was. When they moved the liability, when they relaunched IR35, they moved the liability onto the client. So what that meant, so let's say you've got loads of contractors working for you, and if the organisation is found to not be compliant with IR35 legislation, the organisation pays everybody's tax bills for them now. So the organisations were like, get rid of all the contractors.
Yeah.
They're either coming inside IR35 or they all got to go, right?
Yeah.
So it had a massive impact on the market. But while all this was going on, the problem with that, of course, is you either end up with people inside IR35 or you end up with no contractors. And neither of those is a great situation because you can't manage the peaks and troughs of activity. I'm not just talking about service management here. You know, any project,
I agree.
been exposed to all this yourself, right?
Yeah.
There's always going to be peaks and troughs, and it made it really difficult for people to address those peaks and troughs. Whether it's a technical implementation you need for 6 months, like, well, how am I going to manage this? Because all my perm guys are busy doing BAU. How are we going to, and we can't afford to have a load of project managers sitting on the bench for 12 months just for a 3-month project now and then, so it made it very difficult to manage the workload. And I just saw it as an opportunity. I just thought that, if there's a way to address this situation, it really helps us get ahead of the game in terms of, and I'm selfishly talking about service management here, but the same would apply for everyone. So I spent a bit of time with a law firm who specialise in IR35 law. We got some consultancy contracts written up, and I just started pitching some of the existing clients that we're already doing some work with, or that I personally was doing some work with. And I kind of said, I know you've got an issue over there with problem management. I can do that for you. We've now got a contract which is, we believe, IR35 friendly and so on. But what it did was force us to act as a proper consultancy, which is no bad thing, right? It's no bad thing, but it forced us to act in a different way where every piece of work now we do, it's based on what we call an assignment schedule, but it's a statement of work in effect. And there's a fixed cost for it, right? There's none of this. We're not body shopping people. We know this is not how we work. We act as a proper consultancy now, which is good, which has changed the way we do business. And we work with some very big clients. There's a bit more risk on us now, or me personally, I guess, that we say we're going to do something and it's going to be a 3-month gig. If it goes on for 3.5 months, well, that's my problem, right? So you have to put a bit of fat in there to cover that.
Yeah.
So that's the way it works.
That's normal though, right? Like construction, when you get a construction, doing an extension, they're going to put fat at the end to allow for a bit of extra time that may come in. So it's normal to put a little bit of fat in. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. It's no different. So that helped expand the business from, it wasn't just me then acting as a contractor outside IR35. There was kind of 2 or 3 of us picking up a bit here and a bit there.
Yeah.
And then bizarrely, COVID was the other catalyst. So all of a sudden, those clients that we're already working with needed to change dramatically and quickly. So whether that was reorging themselves, we did a lot of operating model work. So whether that was reorging themselves or trying to make some efficiencies or whatever, right? Everyone needed to do stuff very quickly. So again, that really helped the business. And initially, then I was getting asked, if you've got a good BA or if you've got a good PM, because they trusted me and my judgment on people, because I think we're a pretty good judge of character. So initially, there was a bit of a mixed bag, primarily service management, because that's what everyone knows me for, right? Mm-hmm. But there was a bit of a mixed bag of, just fill those gaps. And over time, I've just realised that's not right for me. I know service management inside out. At least I think I do. And so we've kind of reined that back in now, and we only do purely service management work. It was probably only 10 or 20% of what we're doing anyway. But now we'd never touch a technical project. We'd never just do a pure play PM type thing, unless it's PMing a service management project, for example. Yeah. So everything we do now is service management, which is what I've always done anyway, personally, of course. And when I'm talking about service management, predominantly about ITIL, do a bit of
Mm-hmm.
SIAM, a bit of DevOps, stuff like that. And when I say we don't do any technical projects, I say we'd never touch an Azure migration, for example, or a data center upgrade or something. It's just not us. We do get involved in ITSM tooling, of course, as you'd expect, and we wouldn't go and build that ourselves. But over the years, myself and the team have got, whilst we're agnostic with tooling, we do a lot of work with ServiceNow, so we know ServiceNow pretty well. But we do work with lots of other tools, because inevitably when we're doing process-related work, reorging, process re-engineering, whatever it is, inevitably there's an impact on tooling. So we kind of act in a BA capacity sometimes, where we'll help. Sometimes we'll do some tool selection for clients, but sometimes we sit on the client side, ensuring that the vendors themselves are delivering the right thing that the client needs. So we do a lot of work like that as well. So there's, so the business has grown. We're in a position now, albeit it's been a bit of a quiet start to the year, which I think a lot of people spoke about this before. A lot of people have seen that. But the team has grown, and I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by some brilliant people. In fact, some of them, and I won't. In fact, I will name check one of them, David Barrow, because I know he's been on here.
Yes.
I've been really fortunate that David's been working with me for, must be getting on for 3 years. He's brilliant, right? He's such a big brand himself in the industry, but to have him around, I learn stuff. I've been on the phone to him just before joining this podcast. I learn stuff off him all the time. Arguably, everyone that works for me are much better at the jobs than I am. I used to think I was quite good myself, but the guys and girls that work for me are absolutely brilliant. So I'm really fortunate now. We've built up this almost like our own little mini community of service management professionals, and we all bounce off each other and learn off each other. And we do a whole range of different projects. Some stuff, it might be, in fact, I've got a guy over in Geneva this week running a 3-day workshop for a big
Nice
health organization that you've probably heard of. And he's, so that's just a 3-day gig, right? And then some of the other stuff, we do a lot of assessment work, which a lot of the time that does lead to some sort of transformational activity. So we'll typically go and do a benchmarking assessment against service management.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time, then that leads to further conversations, because we'll go in and go, we'll look at a number of practices. Sometimes we'll look at all 34 in ITIL 4. Sometimes we'll just look at 5 or 10. And the output of that is naturally, here's a score, benchmarking score, but that's the least important output. The most important output is what we and the client learn from the exercise, and why things are done in a certain way, and whether there's any opportunity to improve on the way that things are being done. And inevitably, there's always options to improve, whether that's about saving money or just making the service better, or and so on, or building a new operating model. So we do quite small stuff, and we do some bigger stuff. So as an example, we've done a couple of 6-week exercises over the last couple of years that have then led to a team of 5, 6, 7 people full time for 2 years on a project, because it's triggered a huge transformation project. Okay. And when I'm talking about transformation, it's all service management again. Building new operating models, helping them think about new tooling, introducing, say, what we like to call right practice sometimes rather than best practice. Best practice is great, right? Great foundation for everything, but it works generically for everyone, and you have to kind of tweak it a little bit here and there to make sure it's right for you. So we pride ourselves on making sure that when we're doing these service management projects, it's not everything out of the book. It's, we've got our own personal experience about right and wrong, and making sure it works for the client. So there we are. We're up to date. I think that's brought us
up to date.
Quite up to date.
40 minutes in nearly.
How long have we got? I did warn you.
We got 20 minutes.
It could take a while.
That's all right. No problem at all. I think for me, the interesting thing that sums all this up was your background, going back to education. Obviously, no one chooses to not want to do well, but you didn't have an education, right? I think you said no GCSEs or minimal GCSEs.
Correct. No GCSEs.
And you've ended up somehow getting a job in an IT help desk at the Mirror Group, and lo and behold, it's just taking you on and developed your career, and now you run your own consultancy. For me, I love that story, because it just shows anyone that's kind of starting out or thinking about their journey and what they want to look like in IT or service management, should I say, that it can change, right? And just through a bit of hard graft and being in the right place at the right, not necessarily just being in the right place at the right time, but
Definitely some of that. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. There's definitely a bit of that. There's always a bit of luck, right? There's
yeah,
right time, right place. There's it's not what you know, it's who you know, and all those cliche phrases. But there's an
yeah.
element of truth in a lot of them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. Well, another thing that I found really interesting, I love the fact you started the business as you being a contractor, and over the years it's developed. And again, I think you said like things like COVID and IR35 have all had a little impact in the business. But the business is where it's at now, and you've got some great people working for you. I think some of the things that I want to find out about the business is you mentioned like David Barrow and having some other consultants. How have you recruited some of these individuals? Have they just been through your network? And second of all, I wanted to know like how have you generated your clients? Like, do you do much marketing or advertising? Is it a cold call approach, or is it just utilizing a network again? It'd be really interesting to hear those.
Okay, so I'll do the team question first. So, I've never David's the anomaly here. In fact, there's two anomalies: David and one other guy who's again brilliant. But by and large, everyone that's now worked, and a lot of them are independent in their own right, right?
Sure.
They're consultants in their own right, so associate directors and that kind of thing. Um, but by and large, everyone that's worked for me over the past quite a few years now, I already know them, right? So they've already worked for me in a previous life, either when I've gone into either when I was in perm roles myself and they worked with me or for me,
Hmm.
or when we've gone in to do an operating model review and I've had to help the client employ a load of service delivery managers or heads of service, and then over the years, we've stayed in touch, and I've gone, come over here, come and work with me, because
Yeah.
so most people, and I don't poach people incidentally, but most people that work for me I already know, right? So, and that's really important for me, because
That's helped.
ultimately when people buy a service off us, they're buying off me, right?
Yeah.
That's what, and I think that's what makes it a little bit different. And there's obviously a ceiling to how well this can work when you get to a certain scale, but I sit across all the projects. I always make sure I'm involved. I have one-to-ones with the team, make sure they're all happy, well, as happy as they can be.
Yeah.
Stay in touch with the client, make sure they're happy. So we do operate. I provide that level of assurance, because I used to do 5 days a week myself billing, and it just became impractical, a couple of years ago. So that frees me up now to do less consulting myself, albeit
Hmm.
I do get involved in a few bits here and there. Um, but yeah, to answer your question, most people that work for me, I know them anyway. I've only taken a couple of people off the street, um, and one of them is David Barrow, who you know, and David Barrow's own brand speaks for itself. He's very famous. He's got a couple of books out,
Yes.
and he's brilliant, right? Yeah, so I learn things off him every time I talk to him. So David is one of the anomalies, and there is one other anomaly as well. But by and large, we all know each other, right? We're all
Yeah.
friends, colleagues, and then that's really important to me, because it's ultimately my personal brand online. And I haven't necessarily got a desire to be the biggest ITSM consultancy in the world, so I can't see it ever becoming a problem where I think there's a ceiling to how much I can be involved in certain conversations and projects, but we're at the scale at the moment, where that still works okay. Um,
Just out of
People
interest,
like
Tim,
David.
I was going to say, just out of interest, going back to someone like David and the other anomaly that you mentioned, how do you manage that? So you said off the street, someone you hadn't worked with before. So do you throw them straight into a project? Do you kind of test to see what they're like on a smaller type? How do you manage that with someone you don't know? You haven't built that trust yet.
Yeah, David is a real anomaly there, because there was no debate as to whether he was appropriate for the first project he came and did for us, because I just knew, having spoke to him, we were connected on LinkedIn, we'd been in touch for a few years, had a quick conversation about something, and I just knew immediately. And I guess because I've worked in service management so long, and I think I'm a pretty good judge of character, and this is where the difference comes along. If we were trying to do technical projects, I can't validate whether they're any good tech, but I know good service management people. For me,
Yeah.
good service management people is a lot about personality.
Hmm.
We can learn our ITIL badges, right? Get our ITIL badges, but personality is key. David, as just like everyone's going to love him, right? So, and again, with the other anomaly, I kind of sounded him out for an hour and did an interview. I actually got to a position last year where I did have to put some adverts out because we've just got so much going on. But I was really careful about who came in, and really interesting actually, one particular guy who, when you look at his CV or on paper, I just think, I don't know what this guy does. I don't know what he's all about. I can't work it out. And as soon as I got talking to him, I was like, he's brilliant. Right, we've got to get him on this project. Um, his name's JP, by the way. He's a great guy. But yeah, they were the anomalies. But by and large, I just think, right, that's a good match for that. That's a good match for that. And I haven't, because the teams of a size, it kind of it can flex a little bit. It's like I've got the accordion there, doesn't it? But it can flex a little bit. But there's a group of us now that we've all worked so closely together for a good few years. And we do bits and bobs. We've got other partnerships. You probably know about the Service Desk Institute partnership. It's pretty big. Some of our team do some consultancy work on behalf of SDI. We're now the strategic partner for SDI. We could pick up a lot of their.
Yeah.
When there's any work outside of Service Desk, we handle that for them, which is a huge accolade for us. Like, I'm really proud of that. So we do all sorts of stuff, large and small. But anyway, so back to your question. Yeah. Typically, we don't hire off the street.
Yep.
Haven't needed to. Maybe at some point we will, apart from those two anomalies that I've just mentioned. And then the other question was obviously around marketing and where does the work come
how you
from?
generate clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been really fortunate over the years that I've just kind of went from one gig to the next, and I've built up a good network of contacts, and good service sells service, right? So I've mentioned Paul Carris, one of my first ever clients as an SDM. Probably the most painful 12 months of my life. Probably not for him, baptism of fire type territory. But we've been connected for years, and once you do a good job for someone, and you find with a lot of CIOs, of course, especially the transformational ones and fractional ones, they just hop around from place to place where they just need some help. And once you build up that trust, and they know what your box is, that you can really help them, they're just going to get you in to help them, right? So I've been really fortunate that I've got a really good network of people, and as I've just mentioned, Service Desk Institute, we've got a fantastic relationship there. So we do get a nice steady trickle of work. We support them on some interesting projects. Again, a lot of assessment type work, which sometimes leads on to more larger transformational activity. But we don't market. To answer your question, we don't do any marketing. Do a bit of some blogs and stuff that go out on LinkedIn. But no, I mean, it's always a part of. I guess this year was the first time that I thought maybe I should start doing some marketing, because everything just went really quiet. I mean, partly I wasn't around so much the first couple of months of this year. We're doing some work on the house, so I wasn't around as much as normal. But I don't think it would have affected the pipeline anyway. I think it would have been wasting my time being in the office as much as I normally am. But what we have seen over the last couple of weeks, maybe last month or so, it's really started to pick up again, which is great.
Yeah.
So no, we don't do any marketing. I've always debated how effective cold calling and stuff can be. Really, I actually used to do it as a salesperson myself, and sometimes I don't know, it's difficult. And the other thing, everybody's on LinkedIn now doing drip feed campaigns with, I don't know I can't remember what they call it, LinkedIn platform. There's a few, and you accept a new contact, and then before you know it, you got like ding 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 ding, like loads of emails that all look quite personalised, shaped a bit differently. You're like, leave me alone. So the idea of doing that for me personally was a bit like, it annoys the hell out of me, so it's probably going to annoy the hell out of other people. So we just don't do cold calling. And I say I've been quite fortunate that there's enough going on. We're actually in conversation about another couple of partnerships with another couple of big organisations that want a service management partner like us as well. And I guess we've got to a size now where people are understanding what we do a bit more, understand the brand. Service management's more of a thing now than it ever has been, right? So people kind of get it a little bit more. So that's helping as well, because it just kind of help feed itself then. And the beauty of having a team like we've got now is we don't have to sell a 5-day-a-week project, right? We might look at a requirement and think, oh, they need some workshops running or some problem management activity, but it only really justifies a couple of days a week for the next couple of months. But that's fine because we can pick that up now because there's enough people we can go, right, well, and that's great for the clients. They love that, the idea of just having a part-time activity here and there, because it's quite hard to justify. Go, well, we need a full-time contractor, at X day rate or whatever it is. So that really helps as well, even though kind of some of it's a bit bitty here and there, but it all helps and just helps build other relationships as well.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it a lot. Let's talk about the future of like service management, because if you look at something like ITIL, you've had ITIL3, ITIL4. Not from my understanding, it hasn't changed a lot over however many years now. Do we anticipate that being the same over the next 5 to 10 years? Do we see any advancements in service management over the next 5 to 10 years? It'd be interesting to hear your thought process on that.
It's a really interesting question, and you might have even seen that we put a blog out just a couple of weeks ago on why we feel that ITIL3 has still got its place in 2024. I think was the title of the blog. Because a lot of the clients that we go and see that want to talk about ITIL4 and integrating with different frameworks, which ITIL4 is good for. If you're heavy in DevOps and you want to, it's quite difficult to integrate them effectively and work out where you draw the line between traditional ITSM and DevOps and so on. But it's all doable. But a lot of the clients that we go and see and we help can learn a lot from ITIL v3. Okay. So, and it might be that they did some great stuff with incident and request and problem change management years ago, but now the world's moved on, right? And everyone's like DevOps and Agile, blah, blah, blah. And people forget how important solid incident management is and why a change management process is important, all that kind of stuff. And inevitably we'll go in and talk to them and we'll go, well, hang on, before we start doing all this jazzy stuff over here, let's get your incident process working. Let's get a service catalog built. Let's get CMDB. And all those things have been around for a long time. Like they're not new things. So I think ITIL4 has introduced some really good stuff, right, in terms of how to integrate customer first, service value chains, all that kind of stuff. Really, really important. But I would always ask the question, is the world really ready for ITIL4? Well, a lot of my clients, put it a different way, a lot of my clients aren't ready for it. But it is great. It's opened the doors to work less in silos and more about kind of open ways of working and so on. So that's a good thing. What we're seeing more, and this might have been a leading question on your part, is we do more in the enterprise space now. So we've always called it ITSM, right? David Barrow and I have been talking about this for years about what works in IT will work in facilities and will work in HR, and anyone that's consuming a service from a department, if you like. Mm-hmm. So in fact, we're doing some work with a big university at the moment who have got 300 buildings, and they're kind of going, well, we want to be able to manage the relationships between these buildings, and I'm like, it's a CMDB, right? That's all it is. So you want to understand what classes are running in those buildings and what dependencies there are between certain components or aircon systems and all that kind of stuff. It's a configuration management database. It's just not IT. So over the years, we've started doing more and more in the enterprise space to go, well, all this good stuff that we do in IT that's proven, well, it can work elsewhere as well. So I think, and you'll see, if you go out looking for this stuff on LinkedIn, you'll see loads of it. Loads of people are really debating whether ITSM should be even called ITSM anymore, right? You've probably heard the phrase ESM, Enterprise Service Management, right? For me, it's just service management. It doesn't matter anymore, right? And they say we're proving this because we're doing more and more of this work. It's just service management. And the clue's in the title. If you need to manage a service, you need service management, right? Call it's incident request. There's a common language, and some of it's more relevant than other things, right? Depending on the department or the area in the enterprise that you need to implement stuff. But ultimately, it's just service management. So I might have to change the company name at some point. With the service management people.
That's a nice challenge.
I better go and reserve that domain very quickly.
It's a nice challenge. I appreciate what you said there, and I agree with you on the service management kind of. It's all in the title. And for me, are there any other kind of like challenges you see then over the next kind of like the future of service management? Because let's say, for example, we did get to a stage where it was referred to service management. Everyone's just following service management, and we cut out IT and we cut out enterprise. What other kind of challenges do you think organisations are going to face around that going forward? It'd be interesting to hear your insights.
It's a difficult question. I think it's really important. I think trying to get the younger crowd into service management is quite important. And again,
Yeah.
David and I keep name checking David, but we talk about this a lot about trying to think how whether it's about mentoring or encouraging people just to understand service management to help it grow. Because if you think where service management has come from, there'll be a lot of people like me and people that are much more talented than I am that have been around for a few more years than I have that will all be retiring at some point.
Yeah.
And so how do we keep that impetus and for it to grow, if anything, and for people to carry the baton and go, right, when David Barrow retires, which he will at some point, hopefully not too soon, how do we encourage that new gang of people? How do we continue and for it to become more commonplace?
Mhm.
So, will there ever be a university course in service management? Well, why wouldn't there need to be? But there isn't, right? Or at least to my knowledge, there isn't. So how can we grow that? In fact, I think you had Sophie on here not so long ago.
Sophie
She
Hussey,
talked
yeah,
about
had her on here.
STEM, and
Yeah.
yeah. So there's some great ambassadors in the industry, but they're not going to be here forever. So how do we continue that? And I don't know it's a challenge. It's just I think we all owe it to ourselves to continue that service to ensure that service management continues
Yeah.
and becomes more commonplace, because it is becoming more commonplace, but it's still misunderstood. A lot of people just think about processes and flowcharts when you talk about ITIL. It's not that. For us, it's more about people in
Yeah.
process. Well, kind of the people aspect is just as important, if not more important, right? Anyone can write a process. How do we get people to follow that process to
Yeah.
understand the benefits of that? So yeah, I don't, that's less of a challenge, but just more something I just think we've got to keep banging the drum. And it's great that you're doing this podcast and it just gets awareness out there. But I think it needs more. It's still often an afterthought. We see big technical projects still now, big separation, mergers and acquisitions, and service management's just an afterthought.
Well,
Come on, guys,
I think it's also actually it is I think it is a challenge, and it's an afterthought because let's be honest here. At school, no one knows what service management is, right? When
Exactly.
at school, let's be honest. I've got two teenagers at the moment. When we talk about IT or technology, they just think about coding. They think there's coders in the corner, or a help. We call it help desk in the old days. Service desk now. If there's a problem, you phone them, or they'll just tell you to turn it off and turn it on again. We have a little laugh about that with my boys at home. So I don't think they really get what service management is at that young age. The question is, should they know about it at that age, or is that too young for them to really understand what service management is? Like, at what stage do you think we need to really, I suppose, highlight service management? You know, because I think that's the bit where we can then focus a little bit more as a country to then upskill or highlight service management to youngsters. Is it you know uh, pre 16 or is it post 16? Would you say?
So just out of interest, because this is all quite enlightening for me as well, out of interest, at school, are they actually doing coding now? Is that part of the class, or is that a
Yeah,
thing that they learn,
yeah,
or they just
yeah.
got an intro? Right, okay,
No,
that's
no, no.
interesting.
They do
So
some.
I
Yeah,
think
some.
I
Yeah,
think for me,
I'm doing a bit of coding.
I think as soon as you start learning it, part of the education should be about, it doesn't matter what the tech is, but part of it has to be about educating them the impact on people, right? It's all very well learning to build a 365 cloud
Yeah,
infrastructure, but how do those people that are building that need to understand that people are going to consume that technology?
Hmm.
And in order for them to consume it, it needs to be nice and easy for them to consume it. Whether they get trained on, UX or something like that, but just understanding that there's an impact on people, and this is not just technology. So whether it's in school or whether it's at college or uni, I think anytime there's an education going on, I think they owe it to the people learning the tech to say, you know, you need to learn this stuff as well. If you're learning technology, it's really important to learn about a change process, for
Yeah.
example, unless it's DevOps, right? But again, the same applies. If you learn about tech, learn a bit about DevOps as well. Right? Why would you not bundle it together? Because it's part and parcel.
Yeah.
But you're right. Everybody learns about technology. Got some great techies in the world, of course. Some of them are more au fait with service management than others because it's just not their sweet spot. They're like, right, we're just going to go and techie build this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
there's an impact because users have to consume it, and then it breaks, and we go, well, how do we manage it when it breaks? Oh, there's
Mhm.
a major incident process for that. What's that? Because they've not learned it before because they've just been so focused on the tech. So I think it's a really interesting point. I think, and I don't know how this gets changed, but I guess it's down to people like you and I and other people in the industry just keep banging the drum. But whether we'll ever get to a position where it's part of the education framework. I mean, it should be, right? In my opinion, it should be. Can we change that? I don't know. But you're right. I mean, people get taught technology. They don't get taught about service management, but just understanding that the two are so intrinsically linked is the
Correct.
really important part, I think.
Yeah, correct. It's an area that I could talk about for a long time, and obviously we are running out of time. We are getting to the end of the podcast, so we'll save it for another time. Hopefully, we'll get you back on the podcast in the future. But just to kind of sign off with you, I always like to find out a little bit more about my guests and what you like outside of work. So I know you were massively into skateboarding. Tell me a bit more about some hobbies you've got, family, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't skateboard any. Well, that's a lie. Actually, I
Got one
well,
right
I'm
behind you,
not a
haven't you?
skateboarder anymore. Well, I've got a little boy. Well, yeah. Well, yeah. That's a signed one. There's another one over there that you can't see.
Okay.
But I've got a little girl and a little boy. So my little girl's 3.5, and my little boy's 6.5. And I say I'm nearly 50, so it's kind of missed the boat a little bit with kids, and it's kind of it came a little bit later. So they love seeing me on a skateboard, right? So I've now got a skateboard in the boot of my car, and occasionally we'll go to a car park, and the kids will rip around on their scooters, and I'm ripping around the skateboard. So far, so good. I haven't hurt myself. I can't do the kind of stuff I used to do, of course. What I have discovered over the years is it doesn't hurt as much to fall on snow as it does on concrete. So
Yeah.
that's why I started snowboarding about 10 or 11 years ago. So we get away most years, usually a lads things. My wife's not into it at all, but there's definitely a bucket list thing for me where I just want to snowboard down a mountain with my kids.
Nice.
I think they'd love it. It's not a cheap sport, but it's one of those visions. It's good. I really want to do that before I pop my clogs. But other than that, we live in a beautiful little town called Henley and Arden in Warwickshire. The house is here. We've got separate offices here, which is where I am today. My dog's here, which you can't see. Nobody comes into the office anymore, right? So with the
Yeah.
offices used to be bigger, they've shrunk. So most of the time, it's just me here. But yeah, I very rarely leave Henley and Arden. I live in this little bubble where I walk from my house with my dog to the office, do a bit of work, walk home, occasionally pop into the pub on the way back. That's about that's about my hobbies at the moment. I'm so busy with kids and stuff when I get home. So I'm nearly 50, and I'm like juggling two kids and a dog.
Well, you
So
look
yeah,
well
it
for
keeps me out
50,
of trouble,
mate.
to
I'll
be
tell you
honest.
that. Yeah, you look
Thank
very
you.
well.
Thank you. Someone said to me the other day, "How are you so tanned?" I was like, I just walk back and forth. I've not been on a holiday or
Yeah.
sunbathing. It's just walking back and forth to the office. With the sunshine, I think, right, I'll go for a quick dog walk. So yeah,
Same.
hobbies. Other than that, it's just I'm so consumed with the kids. I mean, you know what it's like. You've got kids, right? So
Yeah.
they're all consuming. But I don't think I'm going to put on any weight anytime soon because it's just I never get to sit down, right? So
Don't
probably
stop.
it's probably keeping me looking younger, by having two little toddlers.
Good. It works. Feel free to have a couple more. Put a bit more pressure on
No,
yourself.
no, no. That ship has definitely sailed, my friend.
Okay. Fair play. Fair play. Well, look, that's it for today. Is there anything else you want to kind of sign off with before we go?
No, not. I mean, just thanks for having me on. I think as we've said, any banging of the drum around service management, from my perspective, can only be a good thing. If people learn from this, or it's thought provoking, or if they want any help with any projects, clearly, I'm not here to do a sales pitch, but people now know what we do.
100%.
So if anyone needs any help, they can reach out directly or by yourself, obviously. But yeah, I just encourage people to keep banging the drum about service management. It's just such an important thing, and it's great that it's becoming better understood, but I think there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
there's a lot of work to do still. But yeah, no, from my perspective, really, really appreciate you having me on. I'd welcome the opportunity to come back if there's a specific topic you want to do a real deep dive on. Maybe we could do a joint session with a few people, a bit of a panel. That might be quite interesting. Do a few
I've had quite
debates.
a few requests actually to do some panels, so we'll
Have
get to
you?
that. Yeah. To be fair, I've got probably about another 2 months worth of episodes recorded, ready to kind of like get out there. But after that, I'll probably go into a bit of panels. So yeah, we'll probably pick a few different topics. So yes, I'd love to get you back on to do those. Maybe
That'd
even
be
with
good.
someone like David. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
would love that.
it'd
Yeah,
be good.
we as you know, we spend a lot of Dave and I spend a lot of time together, so we do bounce off each other quite well.
Good.
And the only other thing to mention, actually, we'll be at the SDI event in October, I think it is.
Okay.
I'm one of the judges for the transformation, the
Oh,
best
excellent.
transformation this year. So I think David's doing a few gigs himself there. He might be doing a few panels or speeches and stuff. So if anyone's going to SDI, give me a nod.
Reach
Come
out.
down, come and have a chat to us. We'll be there for the dinner on the evening, all dicky bowed up and all that kind of stuff, probably. But
Nice.
it'd be great to see people. But in the meantime, if anyone wants to get in touch directly and just talk about anything related to service management, you know, we're only an email away.
An email or reach out to you on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Perfect. Well, listen, thank you very much for sharing your story. It's been great having you on Tech Life Stories. I
pleasure.
look forward to catching up with you again in the future.
Thanks so
So,
much, Khan. Great to see
cheers,
you
mate.
again.
Bye bye.
Take care.